Hello learners, welcome to SWAM annual refresher program in teaching ARPIT 2019 in Library and Information Science at IIT Delhi. I am Dr. Parveen Babbar, working as Deputy Librarian at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Today I will be discussing the remote access to e-resources provided by libraries anywhere and anytime. In this lecture, I will be defining what is remote access and what are the different technologies and softwares used in the libraries for accessing the e-resources through remote access. I will be also discussing what are the rules for accessing the remote access and various mandatory terms and conditions for accessing these technologies. Let us define what is remote access. Remote access in simple language is the ability to access the computer or a server remotely through a network connection. The users have leverage to work remotely away from the institution or office while retaining access to a distant computer or network. Remote access can be applicable for local area networks, wide area networks, or even virtual private networks. In remote access, we have two things. The first is remote access, which can be referred to as a connection to a data processing system from a remote location, for example, through a virtual private network. And the second is the remote desktop software, which refers to a software or an operating system feature allowing applications to be run remotely on a server while being graphically displayed locally. There are various kind of remote access control methods. The first one is direct physical line. The direct physical line control can be implemented between a computer and an institution LAN. Similar line can be used to connect your home LAN and an institutional LAN. This network is faster, but is more expensive and have high maintenance. This network has routing limitations due to the structure of routing from point to point network. Similar to the direct physical line, there are virtual private networks which are known as VPNs, which connects to the remote site through the internet with encryption and tunneling techniques to access the institution network. VPN is generally used in small organizations. Third one is the Microsoft Remote Desktop Service, which is known as RDS. Remote controlled access using RDS can be used to access the remote computers or the servers on the local machine. Some other solutions like Citrus Virtual Apps, VMware, Parallel Remote Application Servers, which are known as RAS, can be used through web browser for clientless access. There are other kind of methods also, which are the control methods to have remote access, which includes integrated service digital network, which is known as ISDN, wireless network, then we have DSL, which is digital subscriber line, then cable modems and many more. For accessing the remote access, there are various kind of protocols. These protocols are used for getting access to the remote access. Some of the remote access protocols namely are point to point protocol, which is known as PPP, Radius, which is known as remote authentication dial-in user service. Then we have TACUS Plus, which is terminal access controller access control system. Then a virtual private network, which I already told you, with tunneling. And then we have PPTP, which is known as point to point tunneling protocol. Then we have L2TP, which is layer 2 tunneling protocol. Then we have IPsec, which is known as Internet Protocol Security. Then we have SSH, which is known as Secure Shell, which is generally used in the Linux or Unix versions. Then we have IEEE standard IEEE 802.1x. For accessing the remote access in the libraries or anywhere in the systems, there are certain rules which need to be followed for having a secured access to the remote clients or the servers. Some of the rules which are important are that never share your login credentials with anyone. So, this is the first major rule when you are accessing the remote access. Then you need to have a strong memorable password. can check with passwordmeter.com for having a secured and strong password. Then you can, other rules for accessing the remote access are: do not use public devices like kiosks, web cafes, coffee shops. I mean, you do not need to go to these places for having access to your remote control to the systems and the servers. Another rule is that preferably use only your institutional email ID for accessing the remote access. Then always implement a antivirus and anti-spyware and run them continuously and update it regularly in your systems. Then ensure user is connected to one network, I mean you are connected to one network at a time, which means no split tunneling or dual homing is advised. That means you do not need to use multiple systems, multiple networks while accessing this remote access. Then the last and the major rule for accessing the remote access is that only use administrator profile to update your profile and make system changes. Do not use the local systems for doing that. Now, I will come to various kind of technologies or the softwares being used in the libraries for accessing the remote access. The first one is the EZ proxy, but before I explain EZ proxy, let me explain what is proxy server. A proxy server is a computer between user workstation and the internet. When user requests a web page, the proxy server receives and processes the request. Now, after the web page is received from the internet, the proxy server sends the request. For the user, the proxy server is always invisible. Now, proxy server can also act as a firewall, which is for blocking incoming network requests from the internet. So, depending on the network, the proxy might be part of the firewall or completely separate from a firewall. So, next is EZ proxy, which is a software which is being commonly used in various libraries and particularly in India and Asian countries due to the cheap cost of this technology or the software. Now, EZ proxy is a customizable middleware program that provides access to your library's licensed content for your remote library users. It operates at an intermediary server between user and your licensed databases which you are subscribing in the library. Through this users can connect to EZ proxy, then it connects on their behalf to the licensed databases to obtain web pages and send back to the users. After this EZ proxy runs on a machine or a network, so that database vendor presumes that the request is coming from IP addresses of your network or your institution, and thus further it permits the access. There is an example which you can see on the slide, that ezproxy.yourlib.org. Now, this is a link which is used ezproxy server and that subscribes to the sumdb.com. This sumdb.com is the website. For making this database available in your EZ proxy so that the users can have access to it, it requires to edit a file which is known as config.txt file in EZ proxy folder, and we have to add 3 lines in it in this config.txt/ezproxy.cfg file. The first one is the title, which is name of the database. In this case, it is some databases. Then we have to put the URL of the database, which is in this case is http://home sumdb.com/search, so that we can directly link the EZ proxy to the search page of sumdb.com. Now, we have to in the third line we have to put the domain name. So, domain will be sumdb.com. This is how the access will be provided in the EZ proxy. EZ proxy requires URL rewriting. So, what is the URL rewriting? Let us discuss it. URL rewriting proxy server requires no browser configuration. These proxy servers change the URLs in web pages so that requests from the web pages from licensed e-resources are routed back to the proxy server, providing users with a remote access to e-resources. This operates as an intermediary between the server and the users, and further with your licensed e-resources. Users connect to the proxy, then the proxy connects to the on their behalf to e-resources to obtain further web pages and then sends the web pages back to the users. Since the proxy server runs on a machine on the library network, the publisher or the vendor which has given this database or the access to the journal or other resources sees the request as coming from an IP address at the library, and thus EZ proxy works. This EZ proxy is provided from OCLC Incorporation, and there is another software which is known as IIITD-WAM proxy, which is provided by Innovative Interface Incorporation. These are most popular rewriting proxy products on the market. You can on the screen see that there are screenshots of the home page of the EZ proxy. This is a login page where you need to put the username and the password. This is a page of JNU where we have cyber ID linked with our EZ proxy server. The usernames are directly fetched from our EZ proxy server and are being authenticated. This is a screenshot which you can see on the screen has been while using EZ proxy, and we are accessing to the JSTOR site. Now, on the top you can see that the URL is not www.jstor.org, but it is www.jstor.org.ezproxy.gnu.ac.in. So, the institutional URL has been attached to this JSTOR website. So, that is the reason it is rewriting the URL and thus making the access available from your home or any other site anywhere anytime. Through EZ proxy we can even manage our users. If we do not have the LDAP where the users are connected through your subdirectory or the domain of the institution where the usernames and the passwords are connected, you can store or save or modify or delete and do whatever you need with the users. I mean, you can add users n number of times in this EZ proxy. This page shows you the user management tool or the web page of EZ proxy where you can put a unique ID for the user, then you have gender, first name, last name of the user, you can put department, designation, phone number, other kind of credentials. Even you can have a security question which will further enhance the security in your EZ proxy. So, we have given a security question and answer fed by the user. You can have admin controls to the user. If the user is a administrator, you just check mark on the admin and this account goes as a administrator to a particular user. On the next slide, you can see a resource management page where we can add or delete or modify the resources available in the library. The resources which we want to share with our users or want that users to have access to can be given over here. We can put the title, then we need to put the URL, we need to put the domain name, and then we need to put resource details, and if you want to put the help description of the database, you can do that in this particular resource type. Resource type can be n number of things from databases, journals, e-journals, your e-books and CDs, whatever the data you want to have in the digital format can be put it into this particular resource management page. After having access to the EZ proxy by the users, we can generate the user statistics in this EZ proxy. You can see on the screen that we have generated the user statistics of various users in this, that how many times the user has particularly logged into the system. We can even generate the statistics what number of times the particular user has access to a particular database or a particular journal or a particular kind of e-resource. This is how you have access to EZ proxy or the RemoteXs for your electronic resources in the libraries. So, the second database software or the technology for accessing the RemoteXs is OpenAthens. So, let me tell you what OpenAthens is, how it was started. OpenAthens started in 1995 at the University of Bath, UK. The first incarnation of the product was developed in response to the need for controlled access to online resources, and it was funded by UK Higher Education, that is JISC. In 1999, EduServe became an independent non-profit organization and became a part of it, and in 2000 in the UK NHS invested in the product, And to your knowledge, 2006 the Open Athens reached almost 2 million users. And very recently in 2019, our the parent company EduServe merged with the JISC and has more than now 4 million end users at present. Over 2600 organizations are using this Open Athens software, equating to a worldwide network of millions of end users. So, this is brief about the history of Open Athens. Open Athens provides various kind of products. To list some or name some, the first one is Open Athens MD, which is a managed directory. This is a complete hosted service for creation and management of user identities and entitlements for a single sign on access to electronic resources. So, we can have basically the access through this managed directory, which is known as MD. Second one is Open Athens LA, which is local authentication. It is a standard compliant software platform that enables to provide secure access to either internal or external electronic resources and enables you to host your own SAML identity provider. I will be discussing SAML IDP provider in detail in coming next slides. Third one is Open Athens SP, which is known as service provider. It is a current generation standard compliant software platform that enables to provide and manage secure access to your online resources. Then comes the Open Athens Federation, which is almost covers all three, and it is a framework that supports the exchange of information between identity providers and service providers using SAML and can be used by Shibboleth identity provider and service providers. So, Shibboleth is also being used through Open Athens. So, Open Athens Wayfinder is another product which is a free to use service for organization discovery over multiple federations. It is a universal discovery service basically, and it is not limited to a single federation. Then we have Open Athens Keynote, which is a middleware to easily connect OpenID, Connect and SAML federations. And then there was third party applications in Open Athens, which are connecting to the other applications like Moodles, and then we have ADFs, other kind of applications. So, this on the screen you can see a screenshot of Open Athens. This shows a login and the username and the password screen, and you can select your organization in the middle path, and then about my Open Athens, the access, how to access it is given. So, this is basically served by MyAthens and EduServe. Similar to EZ proxy, as we have seen in the previous slides, we can add the resources in this, like we want to add different kind of databases or the journals in this platform Open Athens. We have lot of given on the list on the screen like AIP, American Physical Society, American Society for Microbiology, various databases are listed over here. So, we can add more to it if you want, and we can have the discovery service search engine placed on the site of Open Athens. This is a access to a database known as Sage journals. This is being accessed through Open Athens through Sage. So, when you are searching in the Google, if you find, for example, if you find a Sage journal and you have a Open Athens login, at the Google itself there will be a link where you can have access to Open Athens, and that will connect to the Sage journals. Just put it your username and the password with the organizational ID, and it will directly take you to the Sage or whatever kind of database you are looking for or a journal you are looking for, and you will get full text in case your institution is providing in it. This is a short list of institutions which are having access to Open Athens on your screens. You can see that various institutions including Jawaharlal Nehru University, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS and many other institutions are using Open Athens technology. This is a admin dashboard of Open Athens. Now, here you can add the new accounts where you can register your users, your faculty, your students, your any kind of users who are coming to the library, so that these users can have access to the remote access to the resources you are subscribing to. So, first is new account, then in the second option is accounts, where you can check the various users, Then third is resources. As I told you in the previous slide, you can add different kind of resources, journals and other ebooks over here. Then there is a security layer at the fourth place, where you can put the security layers, that what kind of resources you want your users to get access to. Like if your user is a management student, you can restrict your student or the user with the management databases or management journals only through this security portal. Then downloads, various kind of statistics and other kind of data, you can download it through this tab, and my account will show your profile, what kind of profile you are having as a user. So, these are various kind of things which you can do in the OpenAthens, and it gives a summary on the other side of the screen, where you can see the counts, users joined recently, resource allocated, how many times have been logged in from, since your institution is a part of OpenAthens. So, you can see all the statistics at just a glimpse of a second. This is a wizard for OpenAthens, where you can register your user. As I told you, it was in the EZ proxy. Similar way, you can have some of the fields, department, position, phone number, fax, student number, postal address and other kind of things, which you can put it into your OpenAthens to register your user. This is again screenshot, where you can see that user management of Athens. You can see that what kind of ownership a user has, what kind of email he or she is having. So, all the things you can see in the OpenAthens through user management platform. You can have graphs in OpenAthens, where it can show you the statistics, what kind of statistics for a particular software, I mean database or resource you have access to. So, you can generate reports from particular period to particular period you want to have. Again this is a screenshot, a view where you can see that various kind of resources are linked through OpenXs. Just clicking on a particular resource will take you to the site and give a full access to your subscribed content from outside the campus, outside the institution, whether you are sitting at your home or you are thousands and thousands kilometers away from your country. So, this was OpenAthens. Next we move to another technology, which is known as virtual private networks, also known as VPNs. VPN is a private network that uses a public network, and usually it is on the internet to connect remote sites or users together. Instead of using a dedicated real world connection such as lease line, a VPN uses virtual connections which are routed through the internet from private network to the remote site of the users. So, what makes a VPN? VPN is made when a well designed VPN can be generated, or it can be basically greatly benefit a organization if it is well designed. So, how to make it well designed? Provides the extent geographic connectivity, it improves your security, it reduces the operational cost versus the traditional cost which is being used in the WANs, wide area networks. It reduces transmit time and transportation cost for RemoteXs users, and then provide telecomputer support. So, in a VPN we can accommodate more users and different locations much easily than in a leased line. VPN use tunneling, as I told you in the previous slides. So, tunneling is a process of placing an entire packet within another packet and sending it to the network. It is a protocol of the outer packet. Basically what happens is, the protocol of the outer packet is understood by the network, and VPN software uses an IP in IP tunnel. So, it involves basically the encrypting the entire datagram, and it places the results inside another datagram. This is what VPN is, and various key functions which are VPN technologies very secure are: first is authentication, that it ensures the communication is from a trusted source. Then we have access control, which prevents unauthorized users from accessing the network. Any unauthorized user cannot use the VPN. Then lot of confidentiality is involved in the VPN. It prevents the reading or copying of data as it travels across the public network. And finally, the key function is data integrity, which ensures the data has not been tampered with as it travels across the public network. With these benefits, there are some complications in VPNs also. That is the reason it is very less used or nominally used, and as I told you, it is used in the small organizations only, where the user number is very less. So, what are the complications in VPN? The first is additional software for secure connection. You need to have a additional software. There is need to install new software on your system to establish a connection with the server or the database or whatever access you want. Then there are certain operating system restrictions. This needs for a specific OS, you need to have a specific operating system and depends upon the client software. Then there are some complex configurations which need to be done through VPN. For having VPN to the systems, the VPN needs to be configured an account for each user. So, on the screen you can see screenshot which shows the logins for VPN. Here you need to put a group which is tunneling or whatever group you are using, the technology you are using, then username and the password given to you by the organization. But before that you need to install the VPN software in your system, and there is highly secured network. And in the above screenshot with the arrow you can see that library resources are being accessed over here with the username and password. Here the net ID is given, that which is being allotted by the institution, and then UI verify method is given for verifying your VPN. So, this is what VPN is, virtual private network is. In addition to this VPN, various libraries are using another software which is known as Shibboleth. Shibboleth is being origined by Internet 2 in the US, landed the open source project. Word Shibboleth was used to identify basically the members of the group. It is based on Security Assertion Markup Language. As in the previous slides or previous discussion, I told you that there is a SAML. I will discuss SAML in detail in next slide, but the standard which is used by Shibboleth is Security Assertion Markup Language. But before I explain that, let me tell what Shibboleth is actually. Technically, it is a project group like Apache or Eclipse, whose core team members has a software components. Most people think it as set of software components like OpenSAML, C++ and Java libraries. Then we have Shibboleth identity providers which is known as IDP. Then we have Shibboleth service providers which is known as SP. Then Shibboleth discovery service which is known as DS, and then Shibboleth metadata aggregators which is known as MA. Taken together, these components make it as a federated identity management platform, which is FIM, federated identity management. Shibboleth is a multi-protocol platform that enforces a consistent set of policies. So, it is very secure, single login. So, it is very much used by the UK and other libraries around the world. On the screen you can see that these all parts are being shown on the screen. There is a authentication system, then we have identity provider, then we have user information, then we have service provider. On the top you can have a discovery service which can be accessed anywhere, and the service organization is the institution you are linked to. Shibboleth is basically a consortium, is a body which ensures that ongoing development is done. It supports and maintains the Shibboleth software. It is comprised of members who contribute financially at varying levels depending on the size and the type of organization. JISC as well as being a member are the operators of the consortium responsible for its day-to-day management. Then Shibboleth Internet 2 is a middleware initiative created, which is created an architecture, and it is a open source implementation for identity management and federated identity based on authentication and authorization for accessing control, or it is based on the Security Assertion Markup Language, that is SAML. Now, we had discussed SAML multiple times, or we have mentioned SAML multiple times. Let us know what SAML is. SAML is a Security Assertion Markup Language and is a XML-based framework for communicating users authentication, entitlement and attribute information. SAML defines three roles: the principal, typically a user, the identity provider which is IDP, then the third one is the service provider, which is SP. In the use case addressed by the SAML, the principal requests a service provider. The service provider requests and obtains an authentication assertion from the identity provider. On the basis of this assertion, the service providers can make an access control decision. In other words, it can decide whether to perform some service for the connected principal. So, SAML does not specify the method of authentication at the IDP. It may require username or the password or another form of authentication, including multi-factor authentication, which is MFA. SAML has some components. The first component is the assertion. An assertion is a package of information that supplies one or more statements made by a SAML authority. SAML defines three kinds of assertions that can be created by a SAML authority. The first is authentication assertion, which is used to make people prove their identities. This kind of statement is typically generated by the SAML identity provider, that is IDP. Then second is attribute assertion, which is used to supply specific information about the person, for example their phone number or email addresses. Third is authorization decisions, that determines whether the specified subject has been granted or denied permission to access the specified resources. The second is single sign on, which is known as SSO, a typical SAML assertion which contains a single authentication statement and possibly a single attribute statement. A SAML response could attain multiple kind of assertions, although it is more typically have a single assertion with a response. Single sign on has three things. First is protocol. This defines the way that SAML asks for or gets assertion, for example using SOAP over HTTP. Then we have second is binding. This details exactly how SAML message exchanges are mapped into your SOAP exchanges, SOAP exchanges. Then finally your profile. The SAML profile describes in detail how SAML assertions, protocols and bindings combine to support a defined use case. The most important SAML profile is the web browser SSO profile. This SAML has lot of uses when we are using in different kind of technologies like Shibboleth or ATHENS. Some of them are that user passwords never cross the firewall, and since user authentication occurs inside the firewall and multiple web application passwords are no longer required. So, this is very important that multiple application passwords are not required. Second is web applications with no passwords are virtually impossible to hack, as the user must authenticate against an enterprise class IDM first, which can include strong authentication mechanisms. Then we have SP initiated SAML SSO provides, which gives access to the web apps for user outside the firewall. If an outside user requests access to a web application, the SP can automatically redirect the user to an authentication portal located at the identity provider. After authenticating user, it is granted access to the application while their login and the password remains logged safely inside the firewall. So, this is the major thing which SAML does. Then another use is that centralized federation provides a single point of web application access and provide controls, auditing, which is security, and the risk and compliance benefits are there. So, you do not have any risk in it. A properly executed identity federation layer, it is properly executed, that satisfies all the use cases described above and supports multiple protocols, can provide an enterprise wide architecturally sound SSO solution. So, this is what SAML does, and this SAML is being used purely in Shibboleth. Now, describing what actually Shibboleth is or what the history of Shibboleth is, the Shibboleth is a project which grew out of Internet 2. Today, the project is managed by the Shibboleth consortium. Two of the most popular software components managed by the Shibboleth consortium are the Shibboleth identity provider, which is SIP, and then Shibboleth service provider, Shibboleth SP. both of which are implementations of SAML. The Shibboleth project was started in year 2000 to facilitate the sharing of resources between organizations with incomplicate authentication and authorization infrastructures. The architecture work was performed for over a year prior to any software development. After development and testing, Shibboleth IDP 1.0 version was released in the year July 2003, and this was followed by release of Shibboleth IDP version 1.3 in August 2005. Later, the version 2.0 of the Shibboleth software was a major upgrade which was released in the year March 2008. It included both IDP and your SP components, but more importantly Shibboleth 2.20 supported SAML 2.0 version only. The Shibboleth, which is a higher version, the Shibboleth 2.x software has reached now its end of life and is no longer supported. Now the version 3.0 is available, which is upgraded, was released in the year 2015. This version has easier UI, user interface, and login customizations. Then error handling is more efficient. It has a simpler clustering. Attribute release contents are easier. Now it is easier to handle the vendor queries and much improved updated processes. So basically the CAS protocol support is there. That's why the version 3 is very successful now. Now I told you that Shibboleth identity provider is used in this. So the identity provider is basically a web single sign-on capability which authenticates user and supply data to the services and extend their reach beyond a single organization. So this is the role what identity provider does. In addition to a simple yes or no response to an authentication request, the identity provider can provide a rich set of users related data to services. This data can further help the service provider to a more personalized user experience, save the users from having to manually enter the data service requires, and it also refresh the data each time the user logins to the service. So basically it accepts a SAML authentication request from service provider to a user or what actually he or she wants to access. It authenticates the user against your organization existing authentication store. It collects user data from your organization existing data store, then apply policy to control what data is released to which service provider is, and then finally securely transmits the collected information to the service provider. Identity provider has some key features also, like out of the box support LDAP, then Kerberos, then JAS, then X509, SPNE Geo, Geo security and container based authentication systems. Out of the box support for reading user data for arbitrary structural LDAP directories and related relational databases and perform structural LDAP directories, and it is simple and it provides, it can be complex also, which to transform on an acquired data. There are fine grained control over the data to release to a replying party system. Then it has excellent scaling both in performance and manageability. A single instance can handle millions of authentication requests per day and can communicate thousands of service providers. So that is particularly the main benefit of Shibboleth and identity provider at the backend. Out of the box, high availability via client side state management plus additional options for database or mechanism state can be used. Then works can with any compliance like SAML 1.1 or 2.0 version of service provider can be implemented. It supports CAS2 SSO protocol and some additional extensions. The extensive and careful managed APIs allows the software to be extended to support custom scenarios. When we talk about the Shibboleth components, there is a service provider. Service provider can be modshib, which is a AC++ web server which is run by Apache or ISS module, then Shibit a C++ daemon which keeps state when web server processes or dies. So, what does it do? It optimally initiate the request for authentication and attributes. Then it processes incoming authentication and attribute the information. And finally, it optimally evaluates content access and control rules. So, the third platform of the Shibboleth is the discovery service, which is a Java Servlet 2.4 web application, and it asks the user to select the home organization from a list of the organizations given on the discovery platform. Then on the screen you can see a Shibboleth screenshot where you can see that both Shibboleth and OpenAthens being shown. You can click on the Shibboleth if you have access to Shibboleth, or if you have access to OpenAthens you can click on the OpenAthens, and it will lead to the username and the password. You have to put it and with the institution ID, and then it will take to the main page of your institution with the resource access. This is a screenshot on your screen which shows the login pages. Here you can see that Elsevier, if we are searching directly India, you can see various institutions linked through the Shibboleth like UGO, India Scientific Collaboration, then you have Engineers India Limited, various kind of institutions are being listed over here. Then you can see the Taylor and Francis screenshot on the screen where you can link to, have access through Shibboleth with your username and the password directly to the Taylor and Francis website. There was a bit confusion because in the Shibboleth I also named OpenAthens. So, let us see what the major differences between the OpenAthens and the Shibboleth. There are two major differences. The Shibboleth is an extension of SAML, which I told you, SAML, which provides a single sign-on infrastructure and reference implementation. Shibboleth is basically not a product, and therefore, no support service is available at the backend with the code. So, in the Shibboleth you will not get the service port, but in OpenAthens the major advantage or the difference you can say is it provides a suite of supported softwares and services which allow publishers and institutions to connect to each other via SAML or Shibboleth. So, ultimately OpenAthens supports Shibboleth. You can always have access through OpenAthens to the Shibboleth. So, this was what Shibboleth is, and there is another software which is known as RemoteXs. It is spelled as remote, REMOTE, capital X and then S, small s. It has a ability, this software has a ability to provide secured access to the scattered e-resources of the institution, bringing them under one umbrella, and along with the subscribed e-journals, e-books and other kind of e-content you have subscription, the library or the institution have access to, and that too anytime from anywhere, as all the other RemoteXs software does. So, particularly RemoteXs is basically a cloud based service model which enables progressive libraries in creating their own digital library portal, which further facilitates to reach their target audience in efficient manner. RemoteXs harness simplicity. It has a strength and security of Drupal, which is a CMS, which enhances automated monitoring of this users to have access. Now, at present this software is trusted by almost 600 plus institutions across 3 continents to provide single window access digital resources. This software allows hosting service, data backup services, mail server hosting services, resource portal theme design. So, all kind of services made it together to with your RemoteXs facility. Talking about the features of RemoteXs, it has a managed dashboard which provides a snapshot of activities on a single screen. It provides secure and dependable thing which embrace or drive change in industry and allows to keep our clients relevant. The reporting module of RemoteXs is for decision making, where you can get the MIS reports, you can generate these MIS reports. RemoteX can be very well help in optimizing your budgets of the libraries through, because you get all the statistics or data to manage your subscriptions. Then it provides integrated email service which allows administrator to easily send system generated email messages. Then you have flexible, basically the software is flexible, as user category based resource grouping or access to e-resources can be restricted or restrained in the software. Then it has responsive multimedia capability to provide the SDI services, like libraries and publishers can classify content to increase resources usage by displaying their videos, presentations, images, articles, documents relevant for their user categories. On the screen you can see the screenshot of RemoteXs. These are the screenshots. The first one is the login page, which can be logged in through any kind of device, from your iPad to your laptop or desktop or your mobile phones. Then on the second screen shows your dashboard of the RemoteXs, where you can see the number of users at this moment login, number of contents which are provided are being accessed at this moment. There is a graph charts which you can see. You can see concurrent users, number of searches being done. So, any kind of statistics is available in the RemoteXs at the dashboard itself. So, this is the one software which is based on the cloud. So, we have discussed almost 4 to 5 softwares which are being used in the libraries at present. There are many other softwares also, but these are more prominent which I have discussed in the RemoteXs applications. Now, talking about the rules, there are certain set of rules while accessing your RemoteXs which are implemented in each kind of technology or software you are using. So, what kind of rules are? The first rule is that remote access is strictly personal and should be used for personal study or research purpose. This is very important in the libraries because the resources are being subscribed for the users only. So, it should not be used for the commercial purpose by the users, whether they are students or faculty, any kind of user. It should be strictly personal. As I told, that commercial use of data, the systematic downloading which is being done by many times by the users, or large amount of data including copying the entire book, downloading the entire book or journal, is strictly prohibited, as well as the systematic storage of data in your systems are forbidden when you are using the remote access technologies. Then pass of your IDs, user IDs or PIN codes to other is strictly forbidden when you are using the remote access, and to use remote access in connection with another workplace. I mean, when you move on to another workplace or an institution, you need to surrender your existing username password to the present institution. If the library or the data supplier discovers any misuse, remote access account of users will be closed. All traffic relating to the remote access is logged by both the data supplier and by the library. So, that means logs are generated and that are the part of the software and will be written by the library. For accessing the remote access, there are certain mandatory terms and conditions which you need to sign or you need to acknowledge before having access to it. The first one is the major terms and conditions include the compliance with the permissible limits of the copyright ordinance. Users may display, download, print limited copies of citation, abstracts, full text or portions of from ebooks and e-databases for the purpose of research and private study only. Then under no circumstances the ebooks or e-databases or any kind content can be redistributed to another person or be used, duplicated or altered for the commercial purpose. The entire content of the ebooks or e-databases is protected by the copyright of the provider or the publisher from which we are having access to. Users should not remove, cancel or alter any copyright or other proprietary notes contained in the content. According to the license agreement which is being signed by the library for the users, users may not download, copy, burn, capture, transmit, rent, sell, restream or modify any materials from the ebooks and e-databases or create direct derivative works based on the materials from ebooks and e-databases. Users are reminded that they will be held fully responsible for any illegal consequences arising from the copyright infringement. So, the libraries are safer in this part, that users are solely responsible for the illegal use of resources. So, this was what RemoteXs is. Finally, to conclude the whatever we have taught during this module, the technology to access materials remotely has grown from document delivery, which was being used via snail mail, to documents received electronically, and now it has become a remote access technology. No longer the users have to come to the library to find articles in scholarly journals, magazines and newspapers. They can use it remotely through these remote access technologies. They can sit at their home places or the home locations or wherever they are, and they can have easily access without coming to the libraries. Books are not always available electronically, but users can search the library online catalogs to find prints and ebooks without going to the library. So, not only the journals, but other kind of your documents like ebooks, e-thesis, your e-newspapers and number of electronic resources can be now easily accessed through your home locations without coming to the institution or without coming to the library. Finally, the technologies authenticate the users through the password. Once they are authenticated, they can access the library collections for their research. So, this is what remote access technologies are. I hope you have been elaborated or you have understood what remote access technologies are, and you will be getting benefit out of my session, this module. Thank you so much.